Hello, listeners. Welcome to Bol Hyderabad 90.4 FM. This is Neelima, your host for the day. On the occasion of World Photography Day, we have here with us Harsha Vadlamani. He is an independent photojournalist and National Geographic explorer whose work focuses on rural distress, climate change, migration, and public health across India. Hello, Harsha. We are happy to have you here. So, my first question of the day is you began your career as chemical engineer before turning to photography. What inspired this dramatic shift into photojournalism?
My introduction to photography happened a little later in life while I was working as a software engineer. I bought a mobile phone with my first salary. It had a 2 megapixel camera and I started taking pictures with it. And somewhere along the line, I realized that I was good with the camera. And after a year at the job, I realized it wasn't for me. I could not imagine myself sitting in front of a computer for the rest of my life. And as I was looking for a career shift and I looked at the options, I didn't want to do an MBA and join the same corporate life again. So at some point, I figured, okay, why not photography? And to be honest, when I started out, I wasn't aware of like the possibilities with photography because it's not a straightforward career. It's not a like when I started out, photography. I don't know if it was even seen as a mainstream career choice like it is now. Uh, so I had to figure out my way, and as I kept shooting, I along the way I realized, okay, this is what appeals to me. This is what that doesn't appeal to me. So that's how I gradually moved into photojournalism.
Okay, all right. So, what made you interest in documentary storytelling rather than commercial or studio photography?
Okay, I began my career working on several projects related to HIV/AIDS in across Andhra Pradesh. Uh, these are all human interest stories, and some of them were like really powerful stories. And I realized that's where my interest lies. Learning more about these communities that have like all the stories and so much around us that we don't notice, and paying attention to those details and things like those. I think I'm a very curious person, and this curiosity to learn more about the world that we live in, or yeah, that motivated me towards photojournalism rather than studio or commercial photography.
So, how do you decide which stories or communities are worth documenting?
uh, I don't know if there is no straightforward process to this. It sometimes happens that okay, there is something happening in the kind somewhere nearby, and I'm like, okay, I want to learn more about what's happening here. Like in the case of, for example, I documented the drought of Marathwada in 2016, and it was the third year the monsoons failed in Marathwada. So there was a lot of reportage around Marathwada in the previous years. So yeah, I've been reading a lot of about Marathwada, and one day casually I googled drought, images of drought, and all the pictures that I could see were of cracked lake beds and people waiting for water. That's it. And I wanted to understand more like what a drought feels like, what happens during a drought. So just traveled around Marathwada and Maharashtra for 40 days, looking at the various layers to the story, and that's how it happened. Like in the case of Punjab, it happened because my work in Punjab, where I worked for about 8 years, and I continue to work on there. It happened through an assignment. I traveled to Punjab for the first time on assignment for the Wall Street Journal, and this person that I was photographing, we got talking, and he told me about the farming crisis in Punjab. Until then, I never heard about the farming crisis in Punjab. So I wanted to learn more about it. So I started going. I made one trip in a couple of months' time, and then I kept going back. It's been 8 years. So yeah,
When working with sensitive subjects such as indigenous communities, how do you balance authenticity with respect?
I think authenticity and respect go hand in hand. You can't separate them. Um, the first thing as a photojournalist or a documentary photographer that I do is try to learn the language to an extent, even if it is just saying hi, hello. As a matter of principle, right now, I don't work in a place if I don't speak at least 30% of the language, 20 to 30%. Like if I can't hold a basic conversation in a language, I don't work in that place, which restricts the number of places I can work even in India. But it helps bridge that gap between the people that I'm photographing or the communities and me. I don't want to, there's a term in journalism called parachuting, where people land up without any background information, without any context, and they just take pictures or they report and they go away. I don't want to be that person. So what I do is I try and read as much as possible, try and learn at least a few words in the language, uh, and then I'm okay with not photographing immediately. I try to spend time with them or just observe, ask them questions, and they also have questions about me. So I'm happy to answer any questions because curiosity works both ways. If someone is letting you, or in this case, someone is letting me into their homes, into their lives, allowing me to observe, photograph, and then share it with the wider world, they will obviously have some questions about me. And I can't brush those questions. I try to answer as much as possible. I try to build that rapport. I try to inspire confidence and build that.
What kind of research or groundwork usually you do before stepping into a new project? I repeat, what kind of research or groundwork you do usually before stepping into a new project?
I read a lot. I try to find as much material as possible about the place, like various angles to the story. I read news reports. I read if there is an element of science to the story. I read papers, or even social sciences. I read papers. I read books on the subject. I read blogs. I just like try to find as much information as possible. I try to look up images of the place, so I have like an idea of what to expect when I go there. It won't be the same. It never is the same, but it helps me build an image of the place in my head. So yeah, and then never assume. So yeah, despite all this, the things on the ground may look very different. So I should be prepared for that.
You have documented protests, drought hit regions, and even the pandemic rural impact. What's been the most emotionally or physically challenging situation you have faced?
Well, emotional, the pandemic for sure, because I spent 40 days traveling through interior regions of Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh, where places where the nearest hospital would be 40 to 50 kilometers at times, and where getting to the hospital is a the decision is dependent on so many factors. It's not like okay, I'll call an Uber and go to the hospital. It was a factor of it's a factor of so many things, and the pandemic amplified or complicated the whole thing because there was no public transport, there were checkpoints, and there was fear of anyone sick. So, and most of the people that I photographed in the ICUs or in the hospital wards were people who came quite late uh, into the COVID symptoms, and these were people in a lot of distress health-wise. And I think very few of the people that I photographed or like spent time with actually made it. So every time I go back and look at those pictures or think about it, it's hard.
How do you navigate situations where people are hesitant or even resistant to be photographed?
Like I said, I try to build a rapport, and it's always informed consent. If a person is unwilling to be photographed, I won't force them. Again, if it's a case of like someone doing bad, then the equation changes obviously. But if it's a person who is who I'm photographing for whatever reason, like any other reason, then I try to like spend time with them, tell them what I'm doing, and try to get the consent. Again, never force it. If they say no, it's a no.
So, Harsha, much of your work focuses on Indian villages and farming communities. What draws you back to rural landscapes again and again?
I think the complexities of it. Uh, it's not never a straightforward narrative, and there is so much that happens in these villages, and also with the changes in the media landscape over the last 10, 15 years, there is very little reporting happening from these parts. So again, the curiosity and anger that someone has to go through a lot of difficulties like this, uh, that draws me a lot to these stories. And speaking of agriculture, because about depending on how you look at it, about 50 to 75% of Indians are dependent on agriculture, and no matter what the issue is, it always has an agriculture angle to it. So agriculture becomes a huge part of like whatever I'm doing, any work that I'm doing.
When you photograph farmers or tribal groups, how do you ensure their voices don't get overshadowed by just the images?
Captions. My captions are usually very long uh, and descriptive, and I try to pack as much information as possible into these captions because I'm not there just as a photographer who is take to like exoticize these indigenous communities or like farmers. It's it's more about like treating each other as equals and like trying to include their voices. Of course, it's their voices that I'm only trying to amplify or like trying to taking these voices to a new audience.
Do you ever feel that rural issues don't receive enough mainstream attention? How does your photography aim to bridge that gap?
I think yes. Right now, what's happening is that there's a very little on the ground coverage of a lot of issues. Uh, TV news, for example, it's become very studio based. Newspapers and magazines, they don't send reporters and photographers the way they used to like 10, 15, even 10, 15 years ago when I started out. So, how do you ensure? I realize I'm a small fry, like I'm a small fish, and I do whatever I can do, like whatever work that I'm able to do from these parts. Again, my energies are limited, my resources are limited, so I try to do like how much ever possible.
How do rural communities themselves respond when they later see their stories or images in national or international platforms?
Okay, now this is the part that I struggle with a lot. A lot of my work doesn't reach these villages, especially in the case of indigenous communities where unfortunately even their attention spans have reduced. People are more happy reaching watching reels, uh, looking at WhatsApp videos than even if I send a link, very few of them open or like bother to read. Of course, like in the case of Punjab, a lot of farmers they read the work when it was published. Uh, I got the PDF from the magazine and I translated it to Punjabi and I shared it with the farmers. And a lot of them they actually read because Punjab is one of those places where people they pay attention to their issues. So a lot of them they read their stories and they were like, yeah, this is good.
I have an interesting question. Do you feel black and white images can sometimes convey deeper emotion than color in your projects?
Not really. I think, yeah, in the beginning I would shoot black and white because I was a bad photographer. Black and white is easy to with black and white it is easy to mask a lot of your uh, lack of technical expertise. But now I feel color is a lot more challenging. Also, color does a lot of justice to the places and the people.
Your work has been published globally from National Geographic to the New York Times. Do you think international recognition changes the way stories are received back home in India?
Yeah, it does make a change because global recognition is always like, yeah, even the editors in India take me more seriously. But then I'm more happy publishing my work in local publications because it is possible to they allow me to pack more context and information into the stories, whereas if I'm writing for someone like an American audience, I have to spend 100 words explaining where Chhattisgarh is or why this story is important, whereas in the case of Indian readers I can delve straight into like, okay, this is what is happening in Chhattisgarh. So that allows me to pack more information, give more details, and make the stories more nuanced. Uh, so that's what I've been trying with my work to, trying to publish the work in more vernacular publications.
It's interesting that you have founded Gully as a platform for Indian photojournalists. What gap were you trying to fill in the industry?
Okay, Gully happened at a time where I was struggling to find my feet as a photographer. Uh, I'm based in Hyderabad, which is kind of an island when it comes to this kind of work. I don't see, at least back then, I didn't see any other photographers doing similar kind of work. And when I went on Facebook, there was no Instagram back then. I would see all these people who are photographers, but when I wanted to look up their work, there was no single place. So that started off as a platform to showcase the works of photographers, emerging photographers mostly. So I would edit their work, rewrite their captions, write their bios, and do everything. And yeah, Gully ran for 4 years, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction. Basically, Gully was the kind of work that I featured on Gully back then was the kind of work that I wanted to do. So once I found my footing as a photojournalist, as a photographer, and it was also time to let go of Gully, and I started working more on my own projects.
What advice would you give aspiring documentary photojournalists starting out today?
Don't rush yourself. Things don't work out immediately. Documentary photography is all about patience. Read a lot, read as much as you can, listen, pay attention to what people are saying, pay attention to what people are not saying, and again, be patient. Things don't happen because you want them to happen. Like you have to wait. And of course, you can't stage in documentary photography or photojournalism. You can't ask people to do things for you. So if a farmer is going out to the fields to water it, even in the night or 4 in the morning, you got to be there. So have to, yeah.
So, last question of the day. Looking ahead, what's the one story you feel urgently needs more attention and would like to document next?
So many stories. Even on my way to the studio, I was thinking about like what my next stories are going to be, the projects. Uh, Honestly, there's so much happening in the country right now. Central India is one thing I've been looking at, as well as something in Rajasthan, and then something in West Bengal. Uh, let's see.
So, thank you so much, Harsha. It was nice having you on the show. You're such an inspiration to all of us. And signing off for today.
Thank you, Neelima.